What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Trail Theory Podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Alex.
I'm Austin.
And I'm Pfeiffer.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Trail Theory Podcast. We're giggly. We're here. A little giggly.
We're happy.
Very happy.
Tonight.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, look at you guys, crispy boys
Twins.
over here. Just cheers in there.
Freshies.
Nice, I love it.
Right out of the chest.
Right out of the chest,
Love
the
it.
treasure chest. Tonight we're going to start a new series that I think will be fun to do. So we do a couple things like this officially and unofficially. Like we have like found articles. We do our,
Which is a lot of fun to like just go through.
Oh,
and,
I
like,
love that.
What's new?
freeze dry.
Like,
Yeah, the found articles
Yeah,
ones are
so it's a
fun. We'll
blast.
probably do one of those coming up because it's been a little while.
Yeah.
But like the freeze dried meals.
Yep.
Shootout. Don't call it a shootout.
It's a shootout.
It's a shootout.
We're kind of due for one of those.
We
too.
are.
We're
I have at least 3 of the 4 already. I've got them.
We're not doing more of the no oodles, dude.
No, it's not what I'm talking
I
about.
like no oodles. Those
I
are
do
good.
too.
Now what I'm
Hey,
talking
bring
about.
them on, baby. You got any more?
Yeah.
But
I got some good ones.
I like
you
doing
do.
kind of
I
like
do,
these
right.
mini little things throughout, the podcast, the little series that we do. And I thought that it would be fun to do a series focused on our nation's national parks. And each episode we focus on one that we've been to or haven't been to, just deep dive into some of the fun facts and things about that. So
Awesome.
you guys are on board, right?
Maybe.
Where would we?
Yeah, of course.
Where would we? Where would we start?
Where would we start? That's a great question. Maybe in our own backyard.
Oh,
How
there's a
about
park
that?
here?
A pretty big one.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
let's talk about
Real
Yeah.
big one.
So, I thought that we should start with the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, which is in our backyard.
Yep.
Or so, say Cuyahoga. Cuyahoga. All right.
So I gotta say this.
We gotta start with
this. We have to. Start. I watched on a popular video website. I was researching for the episode, and someone kept calling it Cuyahoga.
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 And I
You're
just
just gonna punch the screen.
yeah.
I'd have to turn it off.
I was
Yeah.
like, can you just stop saying
So
it?
technically it's Cuyahoga.
Cuyahoga.
But locally, everyone
Kaga.
shortens it and just says
Right.
Kaga.
Right.
It's like
And
it's
I've
like
had
slurring.
endless discussions with my wife's staff on this and she gets so frustrated. I'm like, yeah, we're going to Cuyahoga Falls.
Cuyahoga.
And it's like, what? It's like, it becomes like a one syllable.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, I'm gonna have to ask Haley what the name of the song is, or like who the artist is.
Oh, I know what you're
Have
talking
you
about.
heard this
Yeah.
thing? This
Yeah.
dude does like parody songs where he makes up a bunch of shit, but he does them for a lot of different cities.
Yeah.
And he does one specifically on Cuyahoga Falls, and he says Cuyahoga maybe 70 different ways.
Really? That's
in
funny.
a song. It is the most ridiculous song, and it gets kind of stuck in your head. Maybe we'll throw a link into it if I can
we'll
find
have to
it.
find it.
What
But
was,
it's
it is
funny.
what was the one of
hilarious.
the pronunciations that you said? Cuyahoga?
Cuyahoga.
I've not
that
heard
sounds
that one.
It was like-
pretentious.
Yeah.
Like
Cayuga.
Cuyahoga. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not good.
like an NPR kind of like
Yeah.
pronunciation.
Yeah,
of
it's
it.
like you're yelling up to someone in your house. It's like, like the words don't come out really clearly, but yeah.
It reminds me of that Cuyahoga, like that old Looney Tunes sound.
Yeah.
or whatever.
Awooga. It's Awooga.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, if someone called it Cuyahoga, I would be like, all right, I'm liking and subscribing. You know?
Humana.
So
That would be
Cuyahoga.
Yeah.
I go Awooga a lot of times when I go into the CVMP.
Yeah, I just called CVNP.
CVNP.
So yeah, I mean
Call it a
that's
day.
CVNP. That's the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. That's
Right.
The abbreviation for it. But
I probably go in maybe 3 or 4 times a week.
yeah, it's what's unique about CVNP is it's very urban.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It basically stretches from like the southern part of Cleveland to the northern part of Akron. So 2 larger cities. It's kind of smacked in between, and there's a lot of towns and built up like within CVNP.
I
So I was
think,
gonna say, like you said, you go there 2 or 3 times a week. It's like, well, technically, kind of always.
I mean,
in it.
yeah, but like I
It's like-
specifically go into
right,
like
to one of the
parts of
trails.
the trail.
mainly do a trail run or something like that.
Because that's what's
but-
so cool about it, and why I think we've mentioned it on other episodes where we kind of take it for granted because we grew up here. But
Right.
it's like you're always in it. It's
Yeah.
just around you all the time.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna say, and I'm not proud to say this, I absolutely take it for granted.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I was even just prepped for this for this episode meeting. I
Get work off your head.
it just made me recognize how many other trails are out there, and that's a great thing, right?
many.
But yeah, I drive through it all the time.
I think if you connect all of them, there's like 150 miles of trails.
125 miles of
125.
trails.
Yeah.
33,000 acres.
It's incredible.
It's a huge park.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, like I never used to think of it as like a park. It was like, oh, we're going to go to Sand Run, or like, it's like,
Well-
I'm going to go to a place, and that's what that place is.
It has not in our lifetime always been a national park.
Right. Well,
That's true.
That's
Yeah.
So it actually it just became a national park in 2000.
2000,
So
yeah.
it's been 24
24
years
years.
since it's been a national park. I mean, it's been on the national a national recreation area since
Right.
1974. So it's been recognized as like a protected area for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it didn't really hit certain check marks that they wanted to hit until 2000. But what's interesting too about the area is like, obviously it's it's kind of more of like an urban sprawl type area. But they have evidence that there have been inhabitants of this area in this, in the valley, for almost 12,000 years. Like that's how far back they can find civilization, or at least hints of civilization in it. So,
It's amazing.
over that amount of time, there's just so much history and so much there.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible because there's a lot of places there's a lot of national parks that are like untouched by all people,
Right.
for all time. This is more like there's such a rich history of humanity and modern civilization in this area.
and it's all interwoven together,
very
which is
cool.
like even just driving through, just going down through the valley, like what we know is just driving through the valley, but it's all interwoven with the parks, and you pass probably 8 or 9 different trailheads or
Oh, yeah.
sections of just going through that section.
Just to come
there's
here,
a
I did.
trailhead,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a trailhead, there's a trailhead.
And it's just
going
going
to the
all
grocery
around
store.
I pass the visitor center every single time I come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The
going up Smith.
what's it called? The Nature Realm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, I
that
love it.
place is fantastic.
Dude, we've
great.
been going there since we were kids, right?
Yeah.
Like my daughter went there on a field trip recently. I was like, oh my god,
Yeah, we do
Yeah.
field trips.
that's
Yeah.
sweet.
You
I
go
went
there and try to get birds to land on your hand.
Yeah.
I feel like the nature realm is like that's like home court.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for me at least. I mean, it's literally right down the street.
Right.
And you talk about birds. I remember like as a kid going there. You don't even have to have bird feed in your hand.
No.
If
Yeah.
you set your hand out, man,
Yeah.
they'll come sit in your hand.
And so, I mean,
that's
for
crazy,
everyone
man.
out, I mean, the nature realm is one of, like, within CB&Ps
yeah.
is one of the
kind of hubs, I
Hubs.
guess.
hubs.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of different trails that go around it, but it's, I guess, even, is it more sort of reserved? I know it's got more rules around it, like you can't have pets and stuff. It's a little more secluded, I think, than some other random
I don't know if
trails
there's
are.
any additional regulations, but it's definitely, I would say, of the trail system, probably one of the more like
Seems
busy
more-
ones.
Yeah, it seems more protected.
A little
to
more
me, at
rules.
least.
I mean,
yeah.
there's obviously like the building there that has like some educational purpose, which is cool.
Yeah. And the kids love that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's less wild.
But that's because I think that, they have like more visitors and things like that. So
Yeah,
rules
it's a
more in
visitor
place
center,
to
right.
like.
Well, and they've got
yeah.
like the herb garden, flower garden section
Right.
of it, which is
Right,
very well
right, right.
maintained, and like there's really
Yeah. There's a botanical component to
yeah.
it.
But
is
it's
cool.
it's just a really cool place. And I know now having kids, it's like I remember that when I was a kid, but I just remember going and hiking on trails.
Yeah, it was just like normal.
But now it's like, oh, we can go there, and they've got this whole inside spot that's got all this educational stuff, and they can play with like fake fossils or do whatever. It's like
Yeah.
there's all just cool shit.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it's just an awesome place to be. And that's
Yeah.
one of
tons
countless
of different places. Yeah. And I mean, I kind of have a list of things like that we can go through. But kind of going back a little bit more of the history of it, like we said, there's 32,000 acres of it. It's pretty large. But one of the biggest features in the park that has an ugly history to it,
the Beaver Marsh.
is
It does have an ugly
the
history, though.
Cuyahoga River itself.
Yeah.
And now it's beautiful, but before we get to the beauty, we got to talk a little bit about, kind of it's kind of been a black eye on Northeast Ohio and Cleveland for a long time. It was kind of the butt of the joke for decades, because the Cuyahoga River was so polluted at times that it had caught fire 14 different times.
We should have brought Great Lakes.
I was going to say, there's a beer.
Well, there's beers named after it called like Crooked River or
Burning River,
and Crooked River is another nickname for the Cuyahoga River.
I think now you can look back on it and recognize it's endearing, but it's not.
It's definitely not endearing. So 14 times it caught fire. I was reading something.
That though. Just imagine just walking down a trail or like even driving on, like you can see I live very close to one of the river. Very close.
Yeah, you're right on.
Just even coming off the road and seeing it just on fire.
Right.
Yeah. And you got to think about. So I read something today that they had some like researchers from Kent State went and they described what the river was like, and they described it as being like black and oily and gooey and thick like tar, and because there was no regulation, or at least there was, if there was, no one was following it, of pollution and all the factories from Cleveland and everything like that. It was just sopping right into the water, and so basically it was just completely flammable and some places solid. Where this could happen, and so it happened all the time. And
to think of how much water is in just a river, not that river specific. So Cuyahoga River,
and how much has
to get water to a point where it's to oversaturate some water with something.
Here's the thing, though.
Right? Here's the thing. How much Ovaltine do you have to put in a glass of water to make it solid?
Exactly.
It's so much.
So the Smithsonian wrote an article, and Allison and I have talked about this a number of times. I think it was. My notes are telling me it's 2019, and there's a lot of good insight in there. One of the guys, they kind of follow this guy who's like an intern at some of these factories, right? And one of the like ongoing things and like the jokes of like, if you fall in the river, you just have to go to the hospital. Like that was literally what the guy was told, like on his first day of work, right? So interestingly enough, so following that kind of note, right? So this thing, it also touches like 14 times where like it was like more of a bigger thing than maybe
that at least
they kind of know of. Right?
Well, and it also like so there was one big one that happened in June of 1969, which was like the one that triggered a bunch, but it also hit a lot of national news because it was in a Times magazine article that talked about like the first man on the moon and all this stuff. So like everybody had this magazine and it talked about the burning river.
And National Geographic wrote an article about it, and it was titled "Our Ecological Crisis."
Whoa.
So on the heels of that,
is a black eye.
Just to kind of stat beyond that, and I think there's certainly like a number of things that kind of did. I think you said it right, Austin. Like that was kind of the moment. Like Cleveland, Ohio, it was certainly not the epicenter of pollution in rivers and polluting our world. It was not. Like, and I think that's the unfortunate part, and I think that's where like the black eye connotation comes with. Yeah. And we're also very close to it. Some people probably don't even know the history of it.
Right.
And that's, I think, for me, of course, living here and like wanting to defend it, it's like, kind of badge. But but at any point, like that was kind of the moment I think in the country's history that it brought to light, right? So then, on the heels of that, so the big one was in 1969. In 1970, Congress established what is now the EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency.
So the EPA was more localized at that point. So what this spurred was a federal EPA. Which was
it made
huge.
a bigger picture of it, right?
Yep.
And then in 1970, so the Cuyahoga River became kind of like this symbol. Like it was this rally that people were like, all right, if we got rivers catching on fire, we got
to do something about this.
We got to you've got all these industries after like the war that like they were all just using the river as their like dump. They were just dumping all their waste, all their chemicals. I mean, seriously, you talk about the Ovaltine example, like
how much?
A lot. But I guess you figure like how many factories were along the river. That was the epicenter of what was on
factories.
Drive up 77. You can just see them.
They're all over.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, and imagine every single one of those.
Yeah,
dumping chocolate milk in there. I mean, dude,
not giving a shit.
Not
dude.
Good. So then also in 1970 when they established that, it was also the first Earth Day, which I thought that part was like really cool to me.
Awesome.
And then in 1972, they established the Clean Water Act. So it really was like America's kind of wink to like, hey, let's get our shit together.
It's a fucking wake-up call, man.
Yeah.
Big time. And see, that's the thing is like, there might be people listening right now that like, if they're not from Ohio, they may not have heard about this, but like if you grew up in like the 70s and 80s, like you definitely heard about this shit.
Oh my gosh.
That's what we were famous for.
Yeah.
Insane.
And I mean, that's a black mark for sure, but at the same time, that's a lot of good to come out. And if we were one of many that were not doing the right thing, but to be kind of the poster child for that, it's like, hey guys, we're not doing what we need to do, and that's almost a badge in of itself. That's like, we shouldn't be proud of it because we shouldn't have done it in the first place.
But
it's like,
it happened, right?
It did
And
happen.
it was at a time in history
we
where
used that event to like now say, oh, we're doing better.
And we are doing incredibly better. Like it is light years away from where it was before. We had river otters before all of that happened. And just within the last 5 years or something, the river otters are back.
The river otters are back. We're winning.
Yeah.
Took a while, but
whoever's like, I don't remember, like whoever's in charge of like whatever cleanup and preservation of it now, like literally they win awards for how clean the river is.
Yeah.
So like, it was an unfortunate thing. It's being reversed now. It's so clean. You would never think that it was that polluted. Now when you go and see it, and actually, I have this little note here. The band REM wrote a song called Cuyahoga about it catching on fire.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I feel like a lot.
Interesting.
It was such a big cultural
great
Yeah.
bands, but
Yeah,
I'm sure
surprised I didn't know that.
pretty interesting. But again, like on that point of like how much better it's getting, how clean it is. I think recently our area in Cuyahoga Valley National Park and the Cuyahoga River was just ranked the #1 urban kayaking spot
It is.
That's
in the
awesome.
nation.
Yeah.
That is
that's
awesome.
cool. I didn't know that.
And once we take down one of the dams, we'll be able to have some like pretty crazy rapids as well. I mean, they just did a Falls Fest last month where they had a bunch of kayakers from all over the place come down, and it's amazing to go down and watch, because in Cuyahoga Falls, where I live, right near the falls, there's a pretty decent falls that are down there, like 2 or 3. And to watch some of the kayakers go through, and they're spinning around and doing flips off the falls and stuff like that, and like nose diving in and everything.
That's
It's
dope.
wild. It's amazing. My wife is even jumped into the falls just like
I
a
was
couple
gonna
weeks
say,
ago.
we
we
went from
get some access. to
We've
this.
we do. Yeah.
I'll talk to her guy. I'll talk to her guy.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So on the heels of
Tim,
this,
let's do this, Tim.
And then I have a thought that will be fun. So there's two additional thoughts, and I think the thing that I think most people don't recognize is like, this isn't the only park that didn't start pristine. And I was reading this article, and it really just kind of opened my eyes. But so 2 examples. So the Grand Canyon originally held a uranium mine on the South Rim.
What?
And
Yeah.
then
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then Joshua Tree, and we'll
I
go
did
a
hear about
little
Joshua Tree
deeper.
too. Yeah.
Joshua Tree was home
littered
to
with
copper.
dudes on acid.
That's now.
That's recreational. use.
Gotcha.
It was home to copper and arsenic extraction sites.
Oh, damn.
So like, I mean, it is what it is. And I think Brian or Pfeiffer, you painted a good picture of hope, and then Austin just kind of touched on this too. But like right now, the National Park Service, like Cuyahoga Valley National Park, is a symbol for habitat restoration. And when you talk about like painting a picture of hope, it's also good to recognize like how far you can come. So and I said the Beaver Marsh earlier. The Beaver Marsh literally was a junkyard.
Yeah.
A junkyard. There were stacks of cars. There were, there was garbage. It was literal garbage. And then, the National Park Service got a hold of it, and they've rehabilitated it. And, this is now like this beacon of light and hope where you can go into these kind of beat up areas and that are kind of within the surrounds of like, or kind of the, perimeter of a park, and you can make something out of it. I mean, the Beaver Marsh is home to like the like wildlife range that it houses is insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, bald eagles, like all the flora, the fauna, the whole deal. It's
insane.
It's crazy.
I mean, nature's undefeated, dude.
Nature is undefeated.
It finds
at
a
some
way.
point,
It
like
finds a way.
it's gonna, if we're actively, doing harm and its factories are dumping into a river, it's like that's gonna suck, and nature's gonna suffer for that. Everybody will, but like at some point, if you just leave well enough alone, it's gonna take it back. And it's like I'm glad, and it's awesome that we National Park Service and like CVNP, and I mean that extends to like our zoos around here and shit. Because like all the efforts that they make to do rehabilitation and all that stuff is just insane. But it's just cool to see how resilient nature is, and it's like, I'll bounce back, no big deal.
I mean,
it was on fire.
I was gonna say we talked about this when we talked about fires. I mean, literal forests catch on fire and they regenerate.
Yeah,
like sequoia trees have to catch on fire to grow.
I know.
Like,
it's just
nature.
such a cool. Is this a philosophy episode now? What are we talking about?
Pretty insane.
It blows my mind.
But no,
Shit's so cool.
And it's cool being in. And again, I've definitely taken it for granted, but it's cool now understanding and like looking into it. It's like being in a place and being surrounded by this where all this cool shit's happening. And it's been happening since Burning River and then, and with becoming a national park and all that stuff. And it's just, there's constant efforts around us to make this shit more beautiful and keep it beautiful.
Yeah.
And we get
it's an awareness.
We just get to
piece
live
too,
in
right?
it. And like, that's such a blessing.
Since we're on the river, and Brian, you mentioned this. Let's talk about dams for a second.
Okay.
Because there's one of my favorite areas is really close to us called the Gorge.
Oh yeah.
And the Gorge is beautiful because it has like these beautiful rock faces and formations, and the path is really great, and caves that are really cool. But there is a man-made dam there, and I always loved it. They have these beautiful, like these really cool like stairs that they've built down that you can go and see it, but I know that dam is being taken out.
Yes.
And I'm curious to see how that changes the landscape of the gorge and how that whole area changes, especially down there, because there are paths that are a little bit closer to the water.
There's one that goes right on the
edge. I assume that'll be
After
like flooded out, and what that might look like, because how the dam looks behind it is like there is so much water.
Oh yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
Like how do they let that go?
It's gonna cause more rapids and stuff like that, which is one of the reasons why they're taking some serious consideration into making like where we are in Cuyahoga Falls and where the gorge is like a huge epicenter for kayaking.
Do we need to buy kayaks?
I think so. I'm
I
pretty sure
think-
the's a place downtown that we could
think
maybe.
outdoor.
I guess I'm just curious as to like
We're buying kayaks.
where the that water's gonna go, like, and how are they gonna do it? Is it gonna be like
into
one rock,
Brian's
like,
basement?
Yeah, right.
God,
Are they just gonna like kind of chip it one at a time? Just goes down a little bit.
All right,
They're
that's
just gonna go
enough.
like boom.
The
dude.
whole this has been
It's
going
like a bad haircut.
Yeah.
Like, God,
Yeah.
don't take any more
No,
off.
here's how I bet it's gonna go down like this. There's one guy who stands on the dam. He's like, I bet it'll be fine, and then he just blow it up and see what happens.
now
Confident there's a little more
no
engineering
planning
behind
whatsoever.
it.
I think they've been inside this process for the last I feel like 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I
Even
think,
that feels light.
and I think
But yeah.
and they still have another year or two before it actually even happens.
Because it serves no purpose
Damn.
as a dam right now.
not right now.
Because it used to.
It was there was a hydro
there was a
plant
hydro
right
Yeah, 'cause
there.
there's
Yeah.
like
yeah.
there's like a little like almost like it looks like abandoned little
On
shack
the
on the
other
side.
side,
You're
yeah.
like, dude, what is this
Yeah.
doing here? So it makes sense, and if it does, like obviously, like most of the time, dams are not. They're not good for the environment. We should just say that in the first place. But like, especially if they're not having any
Producing
purpose,
anything.
they're
Right,
not
it's not
producing
doing anything.
you know, electricity or anything like that. It's like, all right, let's.
Yeah, I
figure
mean,
this
it's
out.
a pretty big dam.
There
too.
used to be
Yeah,
that you would see it off the highway, that big power plant there.
Right.
It was there for
Yeah,
the
yeah, you're
longest
right.
time.
Yep.
I mean,
One of my
crazy.
favorite parks to run by. It's not part of CVMP, but it's like part of the metro parks in the area. But Burst Park, we grew up with that being like a little bit of a dam right there. They had that little waterfall in the dam right there, and they knocked that.
Oh,
bad
I
boy
do know what you're
down.
talking about. You're right. Yeah, they
And that-
knocked
you
it
know
down
what?
a while ago.
I see
Yep.
kayakers and tubers on that every single time I
Oh,
run
yeah.
during the day in the summer.
Yep.
that's so freaking cool.
Oh yeah.
Tubes, kayaks, in.
right near home, man.
Taking advantage of the river, baby.
Yep.
It's at is it down by what's that water park down in Monroe Falls?
It is, yes.
Waterworks.
Waterworks. Yeah.
So I think that's the end point, right? End point, because I always see people getting. No, it's not the starting point because that's up further up in I think
People can
Kent.
start up in Kent. And
Yeah.
there's other
But,
areas.
I
But
always
Mineral
like the
Falls is
offshoot.
an area
There's
too.
like an
shuttles.
offshoot.
I always see shuttles
Well-
from that park across from Waterworks on the other side of the road.
Yep.
That are just taking people up and picking up kayaks.
Well,
and taking them up.
Kaylee and I are friends with TJ in Savannah who own Float the River. where you literally go up to Mineral Falls and you float all the way down, and you can get tubes and rafts and all the kinds of stuff. And we'll have him on or something like that. I think to talk a little bit more about that stuff.
Get some
too.
footage of all of us floating down the river
Floating down
together.
the river
That'd be
together.
good, baby.
Yeah,
Think we could do it on our Nemos? Let's try kayaking on our Nemos.
We got to get those in a pool first.
I know,
and
that's
then
right.
we'll
Test them
try
out in
that.
a pool.
My aunt's pool is open.
Let's do it.
We're ready to go whenever.
We've way overpromised. And
I'm waiting for someone in the comments to
weekend?
be like, "Yeah, we putting these in the pool or
Are we
what?"
doing this? Yeah, this weekend.
Shit or get off the pot here, guys.
Saturday it is, guys.
All right, I'm down.
my God.
I am
mess.
down. It's been so hot lately, dude. Give me a pool. now.
Yeah, we are in the midst of a serious
Scorcher.
heat wave, dude. It is 92 and just humid. That's the biggest thing is the humidity. It's just
Right.
like
Yeah.
an oven. Either the air is like oatmeal.
You go outside, you're like walking through a puddle.
Yeah.
And then that causes just weird random rainstorms that last like 30 seconds and knock over trees, and then it's like 90 degrees again. Like in my
Dude,
house.
that
yeah,
happens.
oh, yeah.
That was the most
Yeah.
insane day where 3 times it went from perfectly sunny to just jet black downpour, like wind gusts, and then back to sunny again, and it would just cycle throughout the whole day.
So we don't have
It
to
was
dive
insane.
into the details of this, but
Oh,
you have a tree
crazy.
that fell.
I do have a tree
to
that
your
fell.
neighbor's house.
House.
Did you see it happen?
No, I didn't even hear it.
Oh, that's a waste.
I know.
Yeah, at least you would see it, get your
poor
eyeballs
guy.
on it.
Yeah,
right?
Well, and
Your
here's the
nest
thing.
cam.
That's
So,
no fun.
Delivery is everything here. I have to teach my wife this. So she came in and she's like, "Our tree fell and hit the neighbor's house," and I'm like, instantly, my brain is
Worst case scenario.
tall tree fell through someone's house and someone died. Like that's, and I like ran outside and she's like, no. And she was trying to say like, no, it's not that bad. And I was like, I just ran out.
Already
And,
gone.
but a top section of one of our pines fell onto our neighbor's roof, and God bless my neighbors. They're so funny. They were, just laughing at the whole thing.
You want your
basically,
tree back?
well, but the branches went through the siding and through the drywall on the inside, so it like
Rough.
punctured the entire. So
now it's a
one of
feature
the
of
one of
their
the
home.
bedrooms right next to the bed. There's just a branch, just like just
my
straight
God.
through the bedroom.
Dude,
and it's
that
just
is
there.
crazy.
Don't
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
And I was like, and I mean, no one was hurt, so we laugh about it
It's-
after. But I'm
yeah,
like,
sure.
dude, if somebody was like there,
in bed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
crap, like it could have been really bad.
Yeah,
Um,
dude, that's crazy.
And it was only maybe a 30-foot top section that split and just came down.
That's why
It
they
wasn't
tell
the
people
whole
to go
thing.
into your basement when you have bad
the
storms
top of
like
the pine
that.
tree went through part of the. I mean, are they one of the 3 little pigs? Is their house made of straw? Like
We
that
got
seems
Pixis,
like
dude,
what?
or what?
I mean, that's
No,
a
I
lot
know
of
that's
weight
intense.
falling,
Yeah, no, tree limbs are no
yeah.
joke. Like I've had to deal with that in my neighborhood in my house before.
I had
so
a
that
tree fall.
sucks.
But all's good. It's just it was a what this weather's. I don't know how we got on the weather, but it's crazy.
It's because we're humans.
'cause it's hot.
Everyone
I
talks
know,
about the
it's
weather.
Yeah, it's so hot. I
We were
love
talking about
it.
dams. We were
Dams.
talking about dams.
We were talking about dams.
So
I
but
went to the
no,
dam
when
to get
we
some
were-
damn water.
when we were talking, the amount of planning that goes into that is insane. And I know, like, I have a corporate job basically. Downstream impact is a term in my vocabulary because of just the work that I do. But it's like literal.
Tell us more.
To understand the downstream impact, literal downstream impact of getting rid of a dam, and like that goes for. I mean,
That's what I
ever.
mean, dude.
Like,
That
as
has
long
to
as the
be-
river is, that's going to impact stuff that's miles and miles and
So
states away.
intense.
Just completely,
It literally,
and it's
yeah.
crazy. So to plan all that out and be like, is this going to flood someone like 100 miles away? I don't know.
I know,
Like, but we got to figure it
In
out.
Frozen 2, they didn't even think
they'll
about
have-
that. They just went and destroyed
Yeah,
that
they just
thing.
did,
Blew
right.
it up. It just blew it out. And guess what? It was going to destroy the city.
Yeah.
The castle and everything.
Until she just
Yeah.
magicked
and
it.
then
not
Elsa
to.
came
Yeah.
and then just was like, blah. Dude, does Cuyahoga Falls have an Elsa?
I hope so.
I think we do. I think we do.
I'm optimistic.
So a dam, that one's getting blown out. It looks like a waterfall. There's one waterfall that's definitely not a dam. That's kind of like a highlight of the valley,
Yeah.
which is Brandywine Falls, which is
Yeah.
a gorgeous
Yeah.
waterfall.
Yep.
That's kind of like one of the highlights. Really, really cool area. A lot of things that are named Brandywine and Brandywine Falls all around the area, which is kind of cool.
I feel like that would be the one. If people were like, "Where should you go?" That would be it.
That's
Yeah.
pre-
On the
pretty
list.
picturesque.
And do you know where the name Brandywine comes from?
The golf course.
Yes.
The ski resort.
They named it. Yeah, the ski resort, the golf course, the
Boston
falls.
Brandywine. Spent many of
Those were all
winters
there first, and then the falls.
And
was
then
like,
the falls.
yeah.
No, Brandywine actually comes from, there are these like natural grapes that grow in the area. And like people way back in the day used to make brandy out of those grapes.
I almost made an
brandy
alcohol
wine.
joke. I almost made an
And
alcohol
it
joke.
actually is.
There you go.
It's not even a joke. It's
Yeah.
real.
How about that?
That's cool. Even better. I like that story even better now.
I do.
That's great. I didn't know that. I
Where are those-
thought
where are the-
I
where are
thought I'd
those
heard a
grapes at?
story at some point.
Where are those grapes at?
Yeah.
I want to
Slurp some brandy wine.
We got to bring those
They
back.
grow some of them at Stan Hewitt,
Yeah,
which is
do they?
a huge manor that the Cyberlings owned. That owned Goodyear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that is also in the park.
Cyberling Park, another park
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
valley
Yep.
that you've seen.
Shout out,
Because
shout
that
out
was
to the Goodyear blimp, y'all.
Goodyear.
Yeah.
See, that's part of like, being in like an urban type of national park like this. Because like, we talk about like, the nature realm and a few other things that are here and there, but like, there are so many things. Like, think about a big concert venue that we have here is called Blossom.
Yep.
And Blossom is like this huge outdoor concert venue right there in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Like, how many national parks have
Right.
an outdoor music
Yeah.
venue that can host like
Metallica.
right, like massive,
Right.
massive,
And then they're
bands.
home to the second best orchestra in the world.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the Cleveland Orchestra. I don't know if our listeners outside of Northeast Ohio know this, but the Cleveland Orchestra is like world renowned.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, baller.
Dude,
Yeah.
and actually, I need to start doing this with my kids and make this the family thing that my parents did. But we would always go for 4th of July.
4th of July, yeah.
and see the Cleveland Orchestra, and it was the best show. You'd think like as a kid, like going to see the orchestra, that'd be
No,
They shoot off
it's
fireworks
so
and
much
stuff like
fun.
that.
And they
too.
do
the fireworks
cannons,
as
they do
well.
the fireworks, they do, and the music is beautiful.
So when we were in college, Kaylee and I would be real cheap. We would go to the parking lot and we would sit on
hang
the
out.
top of my car and watch the fireworks, and you can kind of hear the orchestra in the background.
Hey, man. Got to make it happen.
That's incredible. That's awesome.
We did it
I
like
love
2 years in a row or something
That's
like
so
that.
sweet.
Yeah.
I love that.
But you're
yeah.
right. Like, how many national parks have a huge concert venue like that?
Right
you
there.
Can go, like, right there.
Where you can see, I saw Brad Paisley on the lawn.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Radiohead.
Dude, there's so many.
We've had
so
some-
many people.
We're
But
very lucky.
it is kind of a wild park when you think about that. There's a lot of things to do. Like,
Yeah.
even if you're not like into like hiking and camping and that kind of thing, like
We got
you know,
climbing now.
There's climbing down in
Yeah.
Cuyahoga Falls. Like, they do have climbing now.
Once
like
they
outdoors.
once they open that on other trails,
Yeah.
there's like some restrictions right
There
now.
are
Yeah.
for climbing. There is, yeah.
Once they open that up,
It'll be
and
huge.
It's gonna be. There's so many things to climb.
But like,
could be a
even if
freaking climbing town.
we have the scenic train. Like,
Yeah.
there's a train that runs through the whole park, and you can book a ride on there, and
Which
and, and see
has
everything.
anyone except me done that?
I've
done
only done it for they in the wintertime. They do Polar Express, which is kind of cute to do with the kids
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I've done it for that. But
So-
like, we're gonna do that this year.
Dude, you
'Cause
all
there's
have
a-
to.
Is
The
it back
whole-
up and
it's
running?
cool.
Because it was out.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
down
it's-
like
it's
for
running.
It's
maintenance.
up. So
Sweet.
a few of the trains like just have a huge
like the bubble top
the bubble
kinda,
top
yeah.
where you can
Yeah,
see
you
all the way
see it
into the
all.
sky.
Yep.
It's amazing.
But that's
some Harry
something
Potter
that
level shit.
Yeah.
That's something Steph and I did, and was one of the coolest like date nights we've ever done. And all we did was sit in a train car. It wasn't even in the bubble top. It was just one of the regular
Yeah.
ones. And it's little like tables of four. So we were
Yeah.
paired up
Yeah.
with some other
cool.
random couple and just made friends. And we drank beer. They had it was a Halloween beer tasting tour
Yeah.
or whatever. And you just took
That's
the
cool.
train all the way out. Got to see all the cool stuff. You're drinking beer the whole time, and they bring you back, and it's like the amount of beer they give you is quite considerate. By the end, you're like that.
It's very thoughtful.
I'm
but
not
yeah,
driving.
but yeah, that's right there, and I mean,
Yeah.
at the same spot, that whole sort of peninsula area is
Yeah, that's
they
the
got
town.
they got you can rent bikes and just go on the trails.
Yeah,
you can
it's
go
sweet.
do whatever.
It's so
It's
cool.
My
awesome.
most fondest memory of the park as a kid was so like the big path for walking and biking is called towpath, the towpath trail, and it's like crushed limestone. It's like amazing. I love it. But that lock right there, what is the lock? So here's another like little.
Say, we got to talk
about the canals and the lock a little bit. But that whole area of peninsula with the towpath there and the trains right there, and shout out Winking Lizard, which is a Rock and Wings place with beer. That place rules. But yeah, we should talk a little bit about the locks and the canals. Real quick, just talking about like some like, we talked about Blossom and Nature Realm. Who loved Hale Farm as a kid?
Oh, dude, Hale Farm.
Hale Farm.
My cousin got married at Hale Farm.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Was a sheep? A sheep for some.
I now pronounce you.
A blacksmith.
I do voiceovers. It's not a big deal.
Made the rings. No, dude. Hale Smith is like a flat.
Hale Smith. Hale Farm.
We've lost it.
Oh my God!
Brian did a sheep voice, and we lost the plot.
Talking about those railroad beers.
Oh my God!
I love this.
That was bad.
You've been bad, boy.
Hale Farm is like
the shit.
So it's like awesome. A flashback to 1700s living. So like. All the buildings there. It's like a real farm.
It's like going to Williamsburg.
Yeah. Right. It's like, you've got reenactors, you've got a blacksmith, you've got all the buildings are like intact and it's just a cool
we always
place.
Just do field trips there for school and everything.
Yeah. Hale Farm rules.
Lock 29. That's the trailhead.
Is that the one that's right there? Lock 29. I thought it was a lower number.
That's Lock 29 is over by the Winking Lizard. In Peninsula.
Is it? Okay.
Lock 29.
So let's talk about the locks and the canals.
Yeah, so the towpath exists as a towpath for boats that were going through from Lake Erie through the canals, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's such an interesting feature, and I think it's worth noting, and I think, Pfeiffer, you mentioned a couple of times, like, this is a kid-friendly park.
Yes.
And I think for me, like, I spent a decent amount of time reading about the park because I'm just fascinated by it, but also kind of the reasons that people critique it are also kind of interesting to me because, I don't know, it's not the Grand Canyon. It's not Yosemite. And I think I've gotten to a point with my own hiking that it's not necessarily always about the grandest thing.
Right.
But it's like, there's just so much nature and so much beauty here, whether it's like a difficult trail or whatever, like even just walking on the towpath, which is like a crushed limestone path, the places it takes you just through nature are just
and it's cool,
beautiful.
And it's cool to understand what it came from. Like,
it was to be something very functional and something that had a very distinct purpose at one point, and now it's like we get to enjoy it in a different way, but all that history is maintained.
It could be just as easy to pave over that and put a parking lot and a bunch of walls. Like, it's
absolutely,
we didn't, right?
It is interesting you mentioned a couple of the other parks. It's not the Grand Canyon, it's not Joshua Tree, it's not Yosemite and stuff like that. But like last year, it was ranked number 11 in the U.S. national parks.
I think most visited. I think it was number 1 or 2 on most visited.
Number 1 for most accessible.
Accessible,
okay.
Yeah, that
so
makes sense.
Number 1 voted national park, and in number 1 in affordability. Excuse me. Number 1 in affordability because everything is free.
Right. So in 2022,
no fees, no passes, or anything like that.
There was just shy of 3 million visitors.
Yeah.
Dang.
And there's no entrance fee. I mean, most parks have an entrance fee or some.
And there's 63 national parks in the U.S.
How big?
We're number 11.
How big of a spike you think we'll get with the eclipse being this year?
Ooh, good point.
Oh, dude, I don't know. That's a great
clip. Freaking shit.
That's gonna be interesting.
Let's check in on that when the numbers come.
Because I know people flocked to this place.
Oh yeah,
gotta check the ticker tape for that.
It's profound, and that's, I think, for me.
Okay, so going back to the locks and the canals. So the purpose of these locks and canals was to move ships from one area down, right? Because the river's not crazy wide,
right?
Correct, and it almost had
pretty
to like
narrow in a lot of the places. Yeah.
And so like the purpose was to to get from like Lake Erie
just
down,
through the river,
the river to unload ships, correct?
Yeah, and carry goods, right? Obviously back in that era, the boats were much smaller, right? And they were being horses were pulling them.
The Titanic isn't coming down.
Yeah.
But,
And then I mean the lock systems were, it was just different, varying levels of water.
Right.
So you'd go in the lock, it would lower you, and you'd be on your way. And I mean, you were saying one lock 29.
29,
and there's tons of them. They're
Right.
literally
Lock
everywhere,
3,
right?
yeah.
I mean, now there's like literal areas in town that are named after them. There's breweries that are like it's
Right.
It's a thing. It's
I
cool.
went to Lock 15 on Father's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The brewery.
Yeah.
It was
Awesome place to eat.
Awesome
Yeah.
place.
Awesome
And
place.
there's another like in downtown Akron. There's like a music venue and like park area called Lock 3. That's
Yeah.
popular. So
Yeah.
dude,
It's
it's
right
kind of
along
like
the-
just part
right
of like
along
the
the lock.
history and has a big impact on this area. For
And
sure.
everyone just and I think that's you go to the accessibility of it and affordability is like we've built. It's urban, so
Yeah.
everything leans on the history and takes advantage of it. And it's like this is really cool, so let's use it for a brewery, for a music venue, or whatever. And they lean.
the
they lean-
baseball stadium is called Canal Park.
right?
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Our
you,
minor league. Yeah.
Yeah.
so they lean into it, and it's like so businesses now get to leverage that, and you don't have to charge to come in because I mean the area is making a ton based on people coming in because it's interesting and there's a lot of
Right.
it's what I like about that, the contrast of that, where it's like Grand Canyon or Joshua Tree or whatever, where this is incredibly beautiful.
It's very wild.
It's very wild and it's a bubble, and you're going to go into this different world, and when you're in there, basically everything you're used to is just gone. Right.
Yeah. It's truly wild.
Right.
And
Versus
CVNP is not.
and that
that level.
that is great for what it is, and it's beautiful, and nothing against it. And then to also have the ability, it's like we're going to go into this beautiful place. It's got this awesome history and everything, and it's intermingled with everything that you're used to, and you can get to everywhere, and you can do
Right.
everything you normally would do.
In the
And
morning,
it's-
we're going to go
you know,
for a kayak ride. Then
Right.
we're going to pick up the bikes.
Yep.
Go grab a bite to eat at the brewery. Then do a 50-mile ride to Lake Erie. Like, I mean,
It's just a different kind of experience.
Exactly.
But like,
Yeah.
So don't
there's
go
something
don't
for
go into it
everybody.
thinking, oh, I want the Grand Canyon. You're not going to
yeah,
go here.
your
right? It's like,
expectation.
yeah,
You'll
right.
be
Yeah, yeah.
disappointed if you come to the park looking for that.
Right.
But if you're looking for accessibility, beauty,
variety.
and like you can get to anything,
Yeah.
it's just
Well,
variety.
I was gonna say even if they wanted to charge, it'd be like impossible because it's so intertwined
Right.
with
Right,
just like
yeah.
the rest of
You can,
the town. and-
There's
and
no
cities.
true end. I mean, there's entrances, but
Put
it's
a-
not
put a-
like
It's not like a
one
true entrance.
primary
Yeah, I
gate.
mean, there's
Yeah.
signs that say, "Hey, now you're entering,"
Right.
but like it's
Yeah.
not like it's
Put a tip jar at the trailheads. That's all
Yeah.
you can do.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Oh my God.
it's so part of the town or all the towns that it spreads through.
And there's a ton of places to stay and stuff like that too, as well. Whether you want to stay in a hotel or whatever. But I think this place that I just saw, Kaylee just sent this to me like a couple days ago. The Valley Overlook. Mm-hmm. You can go there and you can camp.
in.
They also have if you're not, Kaylee says that she's not outdoorsy, she's outsidey. So if you're outsidey and you don't want to like stay in a tent or something like that, they have like glamping, like canvas tents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They've got cabins out there and everything that you can rent. It looks like a really cool area, and we might book one of these places. But it's in Peninsula in the valley.
Okay,
in-
so
in
I
the
have a
park.
question
That's-
because
yeah.
I gotta be honest. Like I've done plenty of camping
Yeah.
in Ohio in our area, but I don't think I've ever camped inside the actual park.
Right.
I would say this is probably one of the only areas that I've
I
seen
was just
that you
gonna
can
say,
do that
am I
in.
just uneducated about where it's
No.
available, or it's just really not available?
It's just really not available. Like we've said this before. We have incredible hiking for day hikes.
Yeah.
We've got you can intertwine sections. Like when I do trail runs, I'll run with my sister-in-law. She's got like a trail running group sometimes, and they will intertwine, a 2 mile into a 3 mile into
Yeah.
a 4 mile and back in. Like they'll
Right,
make
right.
big loops with certain trails and stuff like that are that interconnect. And but there's not multi-day like hiking and that we usually typically do for a backpacking trip to where
Right.
you can like go out and do this 40-mile loop
Yeah.
and then you can camp and disperse. There's no dispersed camping.
Right. That's that's one big thing is that's not available in the park, and that's okay. That's not what it's meant for.
That's not what it's for.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, because there's parts of the park where you'll be on the trail and you're looking at someone's backyard.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
they're down, especially down in the sand run area and stuff. It's like you're in neighborhoods. So you're not wild. You're not in wilderness, which is where you get dispersed camping would make more sense. So I understand why. It sucks because it's like I'd love to.
Yeah, right.
I was reading something today interesting, and I can't remember what the term was called, and I didn't write it down. But it's one of few parks where you can just kind of like within the park perimeters. Like, so there might not be technical backpacking, but you can basically like wild hike is I think the way they were describing it. I'll do a little more research on it and I'll report back because I'm curious about it. Where it's like you can basically just off-trail hike and kind of do whatever you want.
Trailways?
Within the confines of the park, right? Obviously, it's a whole kind of different level because you're not on a marked trail.
Right.
Obviously, GPS is probably your friend at that point.
Violating leave no trace a little bit.
Yeah, there's some rule breaking in that sense. But I was reading about
Hey, if they allow it, I mean, if they're just like laying out the rules.
But I was curious because I wanted to talk about, I do think there's like one or two ways to backpack in the park, and you could make it long enough, and we probably should find a way to do it. Just it's home.
Yeah.
If there is a way to do it,
we should do it.
Yeah.
I think the big ticket piece to it is the campgrounds have to be reserved ahead of time.
Yeah.
So it's more like a traditional campground versus like a backpacking.
That would be like
you have
this
a
place,
spot.
the Valley Campground, the Valley Overlook.
Where you would be prepared and like you would have to get to that point. I mean, I guess if you're stuck, you could wild camp, but you
how fun would that be to like try to put together a loop that would keep us out there for a while, and then like, oh, we're
done.
downtown. Let's
we'll
go
walk home.
Let's take a break and go get some wings or something, and then hit the trail again.
Don't even have to bring food because we're going to stop at Winking Lizard.
Right. That's cheating.
Is it? No, that's just through hiking.
I
was gonna say that's
I support this effort. I also think we have discussed. Now we're getting into trip planning a little bit. We have discussed a colder trip.
Yeah,
that might be the best route.
Yeah, for
honestly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Close to
I'm
home.
down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close.
All right.
We're
Book it.
stuck.
There it is.
Someone can come get
We're
us.
doing it.
We just
doing
got to figure out how in
January.
plan it out.
I think the mechanics are there in order to
think so.
do it. So
Yeah.
So what else is here? What I mean, what's everyone's favorite like? Is there a feature? Is there a thing? Is there a place? I mean, we've talked about rivers. We've talked about rock climbing. We've talked about waterfalls.
No one said the ledges yet, but we did say on another episode we talked about ledges for a bit.
Magical place.
Ledges is a magical place.
Mm-hmm.
I think Austin already said it, but I think my favorite is the Gorge. I've got so many memories
incredible.
at
Tons of
the
memories
Gorge.
in the Gorge.
And it's like picnics in that huge like lawn. And just being like, I can picture walking into the park and then things, even just like in the parking lot as a kid, of like just getting into going to the Gorge. And there's just vivid, like core memory type stuff that exists. But that's always been my favorite. That in Nature Roam.
The Virginia Kendall area over there is really nice too. That's like in that more peninsula area. In the peninsula is the city that we're referring to, but that is in CVNP. They've got a really cool overlook where you can see for hundreds of miles. There's some really cool terrain and some rocky areas and some boulders that you climb up.
And that
stuff
area
like that
too has a baller hill for
Yes.
sledding.
Yes.
Like the
best.
bomb hill ever.
Like
dude.
if we ever get snow again, we're going.
Dude,
we're never gonna get snow.
Where I go trail running a lot over Pine Hollow, which is just in the limits
That's
of
where
CVNP.
we've done a couple. We've run together on that one.
They have
I love
an
that one.
incredible hill. So like sled riding is in just
top
the best
notch.
top notch here.
It's the one you're talking about, but I forget the name of the trail, the specific trail I was on. But when it was just a couple months ago or a few months ago, and I had totally forgot about this hill because at the top of the hill there's a big cylinder where they light fires in the winter, and it's like everyone sits around and there's a little
love those,
and it's like so there's a warming station, and I remember that as a kid, and that's where we would go sledding. And I haven't been there in so long, I completely forgot about it. And we were on this trail, and I just turned this corner, and there it was. And it was just like that. And then all the memories come rushing back. And I was like, that's the hill. That's the warming thing. And like, and I'm just walking around, and my kids and Steph are like, weirdo.
What's wrong with Dad?
right?
Why is he crying?
I'm like in the little warming area. I'm like, this is where we would hang out and do all. And it was,
Oh my
it's
God.
just so much like flooded back.
I love that.
And the best part was like, I had no idea it was there until it was just in it. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
That's sweet.
We're here. We've
Things just
arrived.
pop up. I think that's a cool part of it. It's just like you're driving in the valley and like, you know, all of a sudden you're having to drive across a water, like a stream.
Yeah.
Like there's
The
a
ford.
spot in the valley
Yeah.
where you literally have to like
My kids,
forge
my kids love that.
Yeah, in the water.
I go
It's
through.
great.
I go through
I don't
it
go through that
probably.
often. That's awesome.
Probably once a week.
Yeah, it's great.
And I go real slow and make sure nobody's in front of me, and then I pound it. My whole car is wet after, and my kids go bananas every time. Dad, can we go through that water thing again? All the time.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
great.
of course.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't talked about it yet, but the last time I was out, I think I did like Dogwood or something. But there's trails I've done, and you would think the way we're talking about it, it's really accessible, it's urban, you know, and like we're in Ohio, we're not surrounded by mountains. There's not Rainier next to us. Like you're not going up to 10,000 feet. But I've stumbled across trails that are hard. Like the difficulty level was really wide.
Yeah, there's a
And
lot of trails.
Like if you're someone who's looking for something like to go trail running and you want a challenge and you want to actually get your ass
dude,
kicked,
yeah.
you can find stuff that's going to
time.
kick your ass.
Big time. Yeah.
And even just being out on a casual hike, like I usually walk into them and we just pick at random because it's like, you know, whatever. And then, especially if you have the kids, we've stumbled on some. We're like, oh, this is a bad.
Yeah.
This is a little bit too
Look
much
what
for
we've
them.
done.
Yeah. So then we make it through, but.
I love that, and I agree. And I wanted to talk about this, so I'm glad that you brought this up for this reason. But a number of years ago, my brother and I, he had stumbled on this. There's another waterfall in the park. It might not be, maybe it's not technically in CVNP, but it's close. It's within the park system, and it's called Twin Sisters Falls.
Oh yeah.
And I remember it was like a winter day. There was snow on the ground, and we were like, all right, we're gonna go find this thing. And it's kind of, you talk about, there's a lot of like, obviously like very easy paths, very accessible paths. This was not. And it was one of those things, we did like a little bit of research. It was probably pre all trails, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Or at least to our knowledge. We found a map online, and we took a paper map, went to where we thought it was going to be, and like getting there was no mark. There was no like, right this way. It was like we turned off the trail onto what wasn't a path, and we just knew we had to follow this ravine and kind of bushwhack our way back there. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of nowhere, no one's there, just the two of us out in the woods, literally just schwagging our way through to, the Twin Sisters is what they call it, because there's two different moments of the waterfall. It feels like you're like in a bowl, man. It's like insane.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
And there was no trail. And I'm sure
incredible.
it's probably on like in the summer when there's
A little bit more,
maybe a little more identifiable.
Right.
But in the winter when everything was dead and down, it was like we were just walking
Yeah.
and hoping we were getting there. It was very, very cool. It was like,
That's awesome.
It felt very wild.
The other thing we haven't talked about either, if you're a birder, isn't that what they're called?
Oh, yeah,
a
birders.
Birder,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I guess birding would be the
Birding,
activity.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's like over 250 different species of birds, including the great blue heron.
Oh yeah.
And they
My favorite
nest,
bird.
They nest right over off the road near a trailhead,
And right on the river.
It's right on the river, and people flock to come and take pictures.
Hey, no pun
Literal.
intended.
I don't think
See what I
I've
did there?
ever
Talk
driven
about-
by there and not seen
Exactly.
people stop. And ever
always,
in my life.
every time of
I
year.
pass it weekly.
Yeah,
And to talk
Yeah.
about like taking stuff for granted, because like I'm so used to that.
Yeah, the great herons. They're
Yeah.
out again.
They're
Whatever.
out. Oh, it's a heron.
Huge
it's like
nest.
People
you have them fly over top of the house sometimes and
People
everything. They're
come here
huge.
from
To
all
just
over
see-
the place.
to
To
just
look
see
at
that.
the birds.
And that bird is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Dude. It is a big.
People are getting their
mother.
big telescope lens out,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
sitting there with their tripods and taking pictures, and
it's
Last
intense.
time, and I think we talked about on the photography episode about just people who are nature photography, bird
Yep.
photography. Last time I was in the Beaver Marsh, I couldn't tell. There were so many photographers in there, and when I think about this place, it used to be a literal dump, and now
Yeah.
we've got people posting up hours, days,
hours.
looking for,
Yeah.
and like the fact that that's there is just, man, nature is insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's That shit's so cool. And like, what's getting me with this is that there's so much of this we're talking about that is just routine in my head of like Blossom. That was a place that was just always there. And it's like, that's just a thing we had. Everybody has that. Everyone has a Blossom. It's like, no. And it's, and we live down the street from it. I could ride my bike there. And that was just part of life. And then to look, like, dig into it a little bit more and be like, oh, that is significant. And here's why.
Yeah.
And then apply that to everything else with the locks and the canals and everything. It's just, it's in the feels, man.
It's a really fun place to come visit. It's a really fun place to live. I'm very grateful for having it in the backyard.
Don't ever come here.
Stay
away.
Ours.
Our cost of living is way too great. It sucks here. Don't come. Stay out of Akron.
Oh God.
Cuyahoga is terrible.
Yeah, Cuyahoga is where you want to. Yeah, don't come.
Don't listen to these guys.
Teasing. It's a wonderful.
Just be
place.
responsible when you come. That's all.
Yeah.
Follow, leave no trace.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Enjoy and love and respect our park.
Yes. And when you do visit the park, give us a call. We'll meet you for a beer after your hike.
That's right.
We'll come do a hike with you.
You know
something
we will.
Like that. Shoot us an email. The email is
real.
trailtheorypod@gmail.com. Let us know. Hit us up. Follow us on all the social media platforms.
Every single
Make
one.
sure you're watching and listening. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, everything.
You name it.
On everything.
Our Twitter's a little not safe for work.
Do you mean X?
We don't even have a ton. So maybe not all the social media.
Maybe not all the social
And
media.
if you have a crazy fact or something interesting about
Let us know.
CVNP, send it to us and we'll
Yeah,
either drop
what
it
did we
on
miss?
like a short on YouTube
Yeah.
or hit it on our Instagram. But it would be awesome to share some additional insights. I know there's a lot more about the park that we didn't touch on. That
Yes.
I'm
There's
sure
a
there's
lot.
things real factoids that are cool. So send them our way.
No, we appreciate you guys watching. We appreciate you guys listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Cuyahoga.
The Trail Theory Podcast is sponsored by Audimute and Audio Technica. Music by Dan Koch.